Hello and welcome to another episode of the University Duel Podcast, where we talk about university life and more. And with me today, I have a very lovely looking guest. Her name is Funto. I'm going to allow her introduce herself to us and tell us a bit about what she does.
Okay. My name is OluwaFunto Olasemo. I work at Afex Commodities Exchange. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Afex Commodities Exchange. And what I do basically at Afex is building market structure that provide commodity as an alternative asset class. Pretty much trying to create the next generation of wealth by creating alternative to the conventional investment class that we know. You're very familiar with the T-bills, stocks and all those, but there's also that part of wealth creation or asset class around commodities and the rest of them that not only help feed the nation, but also people can make money out of it. So my job at Afex essentially is building the market infrastructure that supports that and help us feed ourselves as a nation and as a continent.
That's really good. I love that people are doing very diverse things that are like not necessarily conventional. But what did you study in school?
Long story. So I studied chemical engineering. I actually went to a polytechnic first.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I did chemical technology at Lagos State Polytechnic, and then went on to University of Ife, OAU, Obafemi Awolowo University, and then did chemical engineering at Obafemi Awolowo University.
Interesting. So today we want to talk about STEM versus art.
Yeah.
I'm art.
Oh, okay. So it's a banter.
So, which career path makes more sense? I'm going to just allow you speak.
So, I mean, the way I would like to look at it, and because I'm a mom of two, so my perspective about career and all of those, and I have two girls that are completely opposite each other. One is just like exactly like myself in every way, and the other one is just the opposite. So for me, if you had asked me this question like 25 years ago, I'll probably have given you that, of course, STEM is a better path of career to go than art. But from the perspective of a mother, right, I don't think one is better than the other.
Yes.
Right? So whether you're doing STEM or you're doing art, it depends on a number of factors.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on the person's interest
And skills.
right? So what naturally do you enjoy doing and you are naturally gifted in? What excites you? What brings out the light in your face when you're faced with it, right? And then there are also things like environmental conditions, right? What's the kind of environment you grew up in? I grew up in a family where there are 4 boys and I'm the only girl. Right, so for me it was almost like it's a STEM thing for me.
What was your number?
I'm the last.
Okay.
So my brothers were like my biggest mentor, right? So he has to be competing against a masculine strength, and in that instance, my brothers were in medicine, they were in architecture, they were all sciences. So for me, it was almost like a natural inclination. But again, just as I said, growing up, right, I found out that whether you're in arts or you're in STEM, it all depends on the individual involved. As of today, we have over 12,000 careers in the world, right? And if you take a deep dive into those careers, some of them are a blend of art and STEM. Right, not purely STEM or purely art, right? I know there are arguments that when you are a STEM person, you are very versatile, right? And which is the case for me, right? I studied chemical engineering, but all my career I've never practiced as an engineer. I've gone from working in a media house to working in technology to working in finance and all of those to working in payment, right? But one of the things that my background in STEM gave me was the tenacity, the resilience, right, and the ability to not take no for an answer, especially when I'm faced with complex and seemingly difficult. So we don't, for people with STEM, most times you don't see them backing down of a very tough situation. So again, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you have. I'm so excited to respond.
Or the other. And another part I would like to say on where that STEM on, at some point in your career, it doesn't matter what you study, you would actually need one or the other. So if you started out with engineering, right, as you go on in your career and you achieve management position, you need soft skills like emotional intelligence, right, which the right brain gives you, right? And if you don't have that, then there's so much far you can go in your career. And same thing, even if you're in art, right, if you then grow up in career, you need to understand the numbers.
Absolutely.
Because how do you then lead an organization that you don't understand the numbers? Absolutely. So it's not STEM versus it's a lot of other factors.
I'm so excited about, that's why like I've been jumping. I'm so excited at the approach you took. But let's talk about it in context. So for example, in my experience, when I got to JS3, the way my school was, they will allow you to do all the courses after your junior WAEC for like maybe some 3 to 6 weeks. And then when you're done, you come and say what you want to do. And luckily for me, I was very, very brilliant in school. Like I was school smart. And so I remember it was now time for us to pick, and I want to go into like the art department, and my teachers, they were
disappointed.
They were so disappointed. Like, what do you mean? That the least I could ever be was a nurse, and that would be me without even trying. Okay. So the first problem that we have is that our Nigerian mindset, we think that the smart people do sciences, the dumb people do arts, and then the neither here nor there do commercial. See, they didn't even add commercial.
I know, right?
Like, so that's that. That's the first thing. The second thing as well is the word art is a little bit more complex when we talk about in the education system, because I was an art student, quote unquote, but it's not just art. A lot of what is under what we call art or art courses are referred to as social sciences. So for example, I studied mass communication at Pan Atlantic University. I didn't get a BA in mass communication. I got a BSc. Do you understand that kind of thing? Then the third thing I would say is that, which kind of ties to the first thing, is art isn't easier.
Absolutely.
It's not. I remember when I was in high school, we used to write IGCSEs, and then there was this guy. He was in science class, very brilliant, and I was in art, very brilliant. So he was teaching me math, and I was teaching him
account or something.
No, I was teaching him English. I was teaching him English, and he was teaching me math. Luckily for me, I wasn't so bad at math, so I could kind of catch up. But he struggled with English, which is not a bad thing in itself. But that is a course that an art student will ace easily, and a science student will struggle. A lot of science students, they can't come and sit down with you and do literature classes because it's difficult for them. So the same way physics, because I ran away from science because of physics. The same way physics was so abstract to me, I was like, I can't do this. And then the educational system is so stifling, because when you come out in the real world, there's no job that you do that you are probably not doing even all three. So you're an operations person, you're doing marketing. Marketing is a social science. The technicalities of operations fall into STEM, and then you're going to you can't be a CEO and not know the financials of your company. So you are playing in art, you are playing in STEM, and you are playing in commerce. So it's more holistic than we make it seem. But then the issue will now come to the way our culture and the world has evolved, because something you mentioned was the environment. So in those days, or in the older times, you can't say I want to be an artist. Let's even forget social science, that I want to be an artist, and anybody's going to take it seriously. Because there's no track record. But guess what? Those people that were doing art then and thought that their work doesn't matter. The artists now, there's this guy, his name is Anthony Azekwo. He even dropped out of school, went to be an artist. He does even digital art. He posted it on social media. And now Anthony can sell one painting for as high as $40,000. So these are the things. But then, so he's also feeding off from generations before him that dared to go what seemed like the alternative route. And now that ecosystem, that career path is growing. It's becoming more defined. But I want us to talk on, because art, as it were, is more subjective. It's more, you can't see the effects as much as you can see, 2 + 2 is 4, or this chemical reaction is whatnot. So I want you to also talk about just how the impact of these sub groups, as we've made it, the impact you think they have on society. So what is the impact that STEM has on the society at large? Because now one thing I say is everybody cannot be a creative. We need the doctors.
Absolutely.
People need to go back and become doctors.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, what also is the impact that art, and I'm throwing it in the commercial group as well, has on a society and its political, social, and economic realities? Okay.
So before I answer that question, I would like to say that there's a science in every art.
Exactly.
And there's an art in every science.
Absolutely.
Right. Recently, I did there's what these days they call it parents teachers conference.
PTA meeting.
Yeah, I mean it's supposed to be an open day for you to come see what your child is doing, but they call it a fancy name, parent teacher conference. So and I went to school, and the idea is you come to school, you see each of the subject teacher of your child, you speak to them, and one of the things they said about my 11-year going to 12-year-old girl was that she did excellently well in biology. But what surprised them is that she just did not do well in the science of the biology, but even in the act of it. So they asked them to draw stuff, and they just can't create. Like the teacher was like, okay, a 12-year-old is drawing like she's in the, and it's extremely neat. And so, which is why I said there's a science in art and there's an art in science, absolutely. Right? So, having said that, so from an impact of in the society, I mean, they said it is the variety is the spice of life, right? And just as I said, I'm not a fan or a big I'm not a big fan of someone saying one career is better than the other. The way our brains are wired, right?
So
there are two sides of the brain, right? God was very intentional when He created the two sides of the brain, right? There's the right side of the brain that is very intuitive, and it's almost like in quotes, they made us believe that's where the art guys have dominance, and then there is the left part of the brain that's very analytical, but God in His intention did not create people with one side of the brain. So meaning, and if we now bring it back to the society, so the impact in the society for me is how does the society strike a balance between these two? Because you can't have an environment where you have all art, right? Then who takes, just like you said, who takes care of the sick? Maybe we start doing herbalist or concussion or stuff like that. And you can't have a society that is all engineering and all that. Who will make us dance when we feel downcast? Who make who market the product? Who will bring the humane part? Who will do the administrative part of the business? So I mean, from a society perspective, right? I think part of the thing we need to look at from a society is that stigma of saying that, oh, if you're in science, you are smarter, right? I mean, we need to forgive the older generation, because back then they had this very clockwise way in which career works. You go to school, you get a good degree, you get a good job, you work 8 to 5, you retire, you're unhappy. But the dynamics of the world has changed, and that is also speaking to the kind of career that people tend to do, right? Just like I mentioned, you have 12,000 careers. Who knew that today just being a content creator could be a thing, and not just the thing, the thing in fact sometimes it's brought some families out of poverty completely, right? So in terms of impact on the society, right, it has to do with how do we ensure that the younger generation don't feel less belittled or less worthy when they are doing a non-engineering course, right? It also has to do with the way our programs, our educational systems are also structured. There has to be conscious effort to ensure. And I'm glad to know that even in university these days, they are beginning to introduce non-conventional courses, right? Entrepreneurship. Back in our days, entrepreneurship was more like an elective, as in you just pick one book, you read, and then in fact you just strive to get an E and then you go, right? There's no intentional, but now putting it at the focal point of being a core course, or being a core course that you get a degree in, is also part of that impact of, okay, how do we system and arts in the society. And lastly, for me, the impact in the society, I would look at it more from a very, I mean, from a national perspective, in terms of how is a nation positioning itself against other nations of the world, right? When you go into to countries in the Asia continent, your China, your Japan, your the rest of them, they have very balanced society where it is not, you have people, they are known for their innovation, tech and all of those, but there are also people around commerce, around even the art part of it. So
for example, if anybody that's starting a fashion brand now knows that they are going to China,
exactly,
to get things,
so it's so that impact from a national perspective to say, as a society, as a country, how are we positioning the next generation? How do we measure against other countries? So there has to be that intentionality.
Absolutely.
So it's from the individual, the family, right? Not belittling. Imagine in a family of maybe 4, right? And then one person chooses to be a musician, right? And then the others are doctors, and we're like, very African parents. Are you?
Yeah, the
do
black
you
sheep.
understand? So it's that impact of going lesser on the stigmatization, then even in the society, encouraging that balance, because we need each other, and then going to the national level where we then consciously, our curriculum, consciously, how do we position ourselves against other nations of the world?
Absolutely. And just to conclude, the curriculum thing, for example, when my first term in SS1, they called my mommy. And why? They said that they can't place me because I was doing biology, which I absolutely loved. I was doing geography, which I enjoyed. I was doing government, literature, and economics. And they were like, I can't do that. Do you understand? I either have to do my biology, chemistry, physics, or I do my literature, government, CRS. And so allowing people to kind of, because we are too multidimensional, too multifaceted to be, So I think that is it. But thank you so much.
I think maybe on the final note for me, in terms of STEM versus art, which career path to take, I think there's actually a critical part that, as parents or even people guardians into helping and guiding our words to choose what career path, there's an important part that we often miss. I don't know, maybe it's because of our environment as African, which is having that psychometric test to be able to determine what is for you and what is not, and not just following the bandwagon. Everybody is doing this. And then of course there's also, I am a Christian, I also believe in the God factor, and also ensuring that apart from all of what psychometric tests and all of those things, because when God created you, you're wired with natural talent, and your career path would naturally align with what God wants you to achieve in that generation.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
And
that is all on this episode of the University Duel Podcast. See you next time.